Alright, so video 2. This one we're dealing with the vowels. We went over the consonants and the alphabet in the first video, so if you haven't already watched that one, be sure to go back or else you're going to have no idea what we're talking about in this. Here is my layout for how I'm going to present the vowels. This, just as you're looking at the video, should give you a good idea of how much we really have to talk about. I don't want to freak you out. There really are about 7 vowels that, well, I shouldn't say that. There's going to be 9. There's going to be 9 vowels that you want to focus on that you're going to see most commonly. We'll go over those first, and these are going to be the ones that appear all the time, that you're going to see most often, that you need to be most concerned with. The rest of these are going to be dealing with the variants of those vowels and how they can change and how different letters modify one or another. So don't get too freaked out by this, but I just felt that it would be easier and kind of a time saver to go ahead and get this laid out first, so that as we go along I can just fill in the vowels and talk about each one. So, diving right into it, the first one we're going to talk about is going to be this little T. Okay, well, sorry, let me back up really quickly, since that mark didn't even go. The thing about the vowels is that usually, and I say usually because I'll show you the exceptions, they appear underneath the letter that is going to carry their sound. Now, I have put the letter Aleph all over this paper because Aleph has no sound in and of itself. It is a vowel carrier. So when you use in this presentation, what I'm going to be using primarily is the Aleph so that we can just focus on the sound of the vowel. I'll give you a couple examples of how it will sound with other consonants once a vowel is placed underneath the consonant. We'll also talk a little bit more about how to read a word once these vowels are placed underneath, just so you can get an idea of how the flow will go. So let me go ahead again, jump into the beginning one here. Okay, so we have this little T underneath. Okay, that is the vowel that says ah. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to write underneath each of these the phonetic sound. So for each one of these, know that as I'm writing these sounds, if it helps you to just put an A, put an A. If it helps you to put an AW to render ah, that's fine too. I do AH. It's probably how you're going to see it a little bit more in different people who are presenting these vowels. All of this can be changed. The thing about Hebrew is it is a character language, so for us to write it in the English, we have to do it in a way that is actually going to sound like the words that we're trying to write. So, for example, if I could use Hanukkah, I've had someone say, "Hey, how do you spell Hanukkah?" It's like, well, which 3 do you want? And all that I mean is that you can do HANNUKAH, and or you can do Hanukkah, so you can get the CH in the beginning, or you can, whatever makes you say Hanukkah when you read it totally counts. There are tons of different variants to get that through. So again, I'm going to write AH for these sounds, or at least this one in particular, in the way that it makes sense to me to write these out. If there's something else that gets that across for you better, go ahead and put that in your notes. The one thing you need to know about this ah is that a single line underneath a letter also says ah. Okay? So I don't entirely know why there are 2 ah sounds. When you start to get into vocabulary and grammar a bit more, know that there is going to be one that is going to appear, I believe usually it's going to be this one preceding the other. It's going to be the little T going before the dash. And it's just the way that it is. I wish I could tell you why. I'm sure some people could. But just for now, know that there are two ah sounds. One's going to look like a little T. The other one is going to be a flat line. Okay? Then there are two dots right next to each other that say A. Okay, it's a long A sound. Then there are three dots, kind of a little upside down triangle, and that's going to be Eh. It's a short E sound. Okay, next one is a single dot, is I. This one actually, if it helps you remember, think of that single dot as dotting the top of an I. That you can remember that the one dot is a short I and says I. Okay, next one. It's kind of a backwards staircase. And this one says, well, Okay, now I hesitate on that one because I have heard in one source that this is as in put. I have also heard that it is as in zoo. I've never encountered someone actually speaking Hebrew where you can hear the difference. It's very subtle if it's there at all. So if it helps you to think of it as as in zoo, that's fine. If it helps you to think of it as in put, that's fine also. Just know that it is going to be more or less a long U sound. I'll get into a minute why I think it's a little bit easier to think of this one as in put. But we'll come back to that. The next thing I want to point out is, and I might have drawn an extra olive here. If I did, I'm going to leave that one alone and come back to it. So all of these a, e, I, are going to be standalone. And so we have the bet written right here, okay, which carries the b sound. Keep in mind, we talked about how this one looks awfully similar to the kaf chaf. Here we have the little tail on it that tells you it's a bet, and if it appears without the dot in the middle, right there, it would be v, and with the dot, it's b. Remember, the hard sound, the b as opposed to the v, is going to be the one that has the dot. So all of these, if I were to put, say, this one underneath the bet, it would be ba. Same thing here, ba. If I were to put the two horizontal dots underneath the bet, it would be be. Be, bi, bu. Okay, hear how that works? So when they stand alone with the silent aleph, it's a, e, I, with a bet, with a B sound, ba, be, bi, bu. Okay, I'm going to go through these kind of quickly because, you know, this is the video. You can replay it as much as you want and make sure that it makes sense to you. So the reason that I put the bet on here is because that there is a vowel that doesn't really work underneath the aleph. You need a sound for this one. And what it is its vertical dots. Now, backing up really quickly, I in the first video did a lot of mnemonic suggestions for you to remember which things these are. And how to remember the letters and the differences between them and things like that. For the vowels, I'm sorry to say that I don't really have that for you. There are some mnemonics, like I said, with the I and the single dot. You can think of it as dotting the I. You can, gosh, I don't even know. Is one of those that looks kind of like a staircase. So you can think of falling down the staircase and if that helps you. B is one of those, the stopping sound with the two vertical dots. If you want to think of it like a stoplight, like a traffic light. It's so it's going to stop the sound. So instead of saying ba or bay, what this one does is it just says b. It's a real quick. If it were under the gimel, for example, it would say g. If it were under the lamed, for example, it would say l. Okay, so it just takes that first sound, says it very quickly, and then as you see as we get into other letters and we start reading some different words, that it's actually going to just have a quick introduction sound, and then you're going to keep going with another vowel that will be under another letter. Okay, just know that stopping sound says b. Next, I talked about how we have the vav. Okay, I wrote two of them here because there are two variants. Sometimes vav says v. However, sometimes vav is also a vowel carrier. And what that means is, like the aleph in each of these cases, it's going to have a sound. Oh, and I'm sorry, let me write stop. Just do like that. Sorry, because I had the sounds underneath all the others. What it's going to do is it's going to carry a vowel in and of itself so that it's not going to say v and then the vowel sound, it'll just be silent in and of itself. So one of those is where the dot is going to appear on the inside of the vav. Okay? When it's inside of it, it says oo. And this one is why I would almost say that you are better off to remember the three diagonal dots over here as as in put, and this as oo as in zoo. Because there are two of them, if it helps you to remember them and to have some kind of difference in there, I would say go for it, just so that it's a little bit easier to remember these things down the road as you're starting to get more into reading and having to identify which vowel is which. So, but again, when you're actually speaking it, there's not going to be a whole lot of a difference. I just want you to be aware of how you can identify a difference so that it's a little bit easier to memorize and to learn as you go on. So, then the next one is going to have this dot at the top. Okay? I'm sorry these are running together a little bit, but I hope this is clear enough. So here's the vav with the dot on the inside of it, and here's the dot with the the vav with the dot on top of it that will say O. Okay, I do have two little mnemonics for this one. The first is, if you got hit in the stomach, it's right in the middle of the vav, it's right in the stomach of the vav, and you'd say, ooh. Okay, so it goes right into the stomach of it. If you get the little light bulb on the top of your head, right here where the dot is on the top of the vav, it says, oh, got an idea. Okay, ooh in the stomach on the inside, oh on the top of the head, on the top of the vav, I got an idea. Okay, what I'm going to do, since this actually ran over and I find myself with an extra aleph over here, what I'm going to do is point out the difference right off the bat. This one throws off of people, and because usually this doesn't come up when people are talking about vowels. It's something that you kind of discover when you've been reading for a little while. Is sometimes words don't find the need to put the vav in there as a vowel carrier. What I mean is, sometimes they don't take the vav, they just let an aleph or any other given letter carry that. Okay? So what you can do is you can almost picture that there's this little ghost vav right there that isn't actually there, so that it'll show up just with the dot hanging over to the left side of whatever letter is going to be carrying the sound. And it takes the same sound. These are the same thing. Okay, so if you picture your little ghost vav there, it's also going to say O. Just like that. So know that it can appear and have an O sound without having a vav, even though you'll see both in different words. So that's pretty simple. I'm gonna probably eventually post the ability to maybe have some worksheets or just do some practice stuff, go over some different examples. These are pretty introductory. These videos that I'm posting right now are just to get everything out on the plate so that you can work by yourself, maybe find somebody that you can actually ask these questions of, get a good strict overview of what's happening, and as we go on and I get more examples with reading, you'll start to see how this plays out. But so I'm sorry that I don't have a lot of examples for you necessarily. Maybe at the end of this, if we still have some time, I can play around with it a little bit more. But just know we have our two ahs. Okay, we have the T and the dash. Dots right next to each other say A. 3 dots, eh. 1 dot, I, 3 vertical, U, the ghost vav, O, our stopping sound is our traffic light, the 2 vertical dots, say B, and again, that's only with the bet, I want to stress that. Any one of these, and I'll point that out in a little bit when we start to get examples, you can stick any letter there and it's just going to have the quick sound and then stop it, okay? So here's the vav. That's going to say oo. The vav is silent in that. It's just going to take a vowel carrier to say oo when it's on the inside, and then o when it's on the top. Alright, so now we're going to talk a little bit about some variants in how these show up. One of the things that you're going to see is when letters like the ah, both of the ahs, okay, the little T and the dash, and then the I. Sometimes you'll see these and you could read that as ah, I, okay? Then I'll throw you a little bit of a curveball. I'm going to put the yud, okay? That is the yud. Go ahead and go back to the other video to kind of review what that'll look like. I just do a real simple bracket. Sometimes you're going to see it much fancier than that. But it is the tiniest letter, just this little tiny thing, hangs at the top, doesn't really touch the top line or the bottom if you do it correctly, but just know that it's this tiny little letter. It is yod. Okay, it can carry the Y sound and say y. Sometimes it actually operates the same way as a Y would in English, that it can be silent and just modifies the vowel. That's exactly what's happening in these 3 situations. So ah becomes I. And I'm going to write I. Oh, that'll be confusing. I'll do that, sorry. It's not going to look the clearest on the video. I'll write it a little better over here, okay? So A, I, Y. We'll do it like that just to get some clarity. I. Okay? That's how I put this one, because what it is it doesn't really make it a long vowel if it was short up here. I don't want you to get confused, because obviously ah doesn't quite become I if you think about it as short or long vowels in the same way as the English. What it is you can think of it as saying ah, y, I. Okay? It's very subtle and it will just say I. Don't be too worried about getting the I sound when you're actually speaking or reading, because it's not that clear. But if it helps you to think of it as how it modifies that vowel, think of it as having the sound of the ah, okay, in the dash and the T, and I. This one, as we saw up here, is the I, and then when you get the yud stuck after it, it says E. E. Okay, do you hear that? E. E. So it's very subtle and it's not going to sound as much as I'm trying to pronounce it here. I'm just trying to give you an idea that will get this to kind of stick in your head a little bit more easily. If it doesn't help you, completely scrap it and do whatever does help you. If it does help, all the better. Okay, don't let anything I say throw you off. If I'm trying to help you and that makes you more confused, when I give you a little mnemonic, please just throw it out and think of something yourself. If I put my email on all of these videos, so if you want to contact me directly and maybe come up with your own mnemonics, ask some questions about these things, please feel free to do so that this makes complete sense to you. Because the last thing I want to do is put out a bunch of instructional videos that are counterintuitive. So the only last thing I'm going to talk about here is what I have written down here. So we have an aleph, vav, yud. Okay, this doesn't mean anything really by itself until I start adding some vowels. And actually all that I'm going to do is add this vowel. Okay, so we know that if this is standalone, it's going to say oo, right? That's this one up here. So what happens when I add the y, ooey? Do you hear that? Ooey. Probably even though we're doing this others, but it's ooey. Kind of like that. Ooey. Again, it's very subtle. Ooey. It's kind of a French yes. It's oui. Ooey. With a little bit more ooh at the front of it, okay? Again, these are very, very subtle, but I want you to be familiar with these to know that they will eventually occur so that you're not completely blindsided when you see these things, but know that they are rare, but I want you to just be able to be aware of these things so that when they show up in your reading, you're not completely confused, so that maybe one day you can be like, oh, I think she talked about that, and then you can come back to this video and find out what I said about it if you really need to double check some things. Okay, the other one, go ahead and do this vowel. Okay, on its own, like we said. Okay, that is, uh-oh, I don't want to get this thing off centered. Sorry, it's going to be O. It's this vowel up here. Oi. Okay, I'm going to write it like that. It's kind of oi. It's like goy. Goyim. That word is where you'll see that kind of vowel show up. If it helps you, oy vey. That's Yiddish, but it's the same kind of sound. Oi. And I do actually believe that there's a word adversary or something like adversary or enemy that that I believe is the word oi. I'm not entirely positive it's spelled this way. I'd have to get back to you on that one, but this will appear every once in a while, and it is kind of funny to read because it's oi. Especially since the word is enemy that it translates as. So, last thing I'm going to talk about, again, not going to happen a whole lot, I just don't want you to freak out when you start reading, is you might encounter, again, we've got the ah sound with the T, got the ah sound with the dash, and then we're going to bring back the eh. Okay, that's this one up here. The three dots say eh. With this ah, what happens is if I add the stopped sound, let me flip over my pen here, to the side of each of these, you say, what in the world is happening there? How in the world do we get eh with these stopped sounds? Okay? All I want you to know, and I won't go into what Sephardic and Ashkenazi is, know that there are two different pronunciations depending on whether you stick with one of these groups or another or come from teachings. I come from a Sephardic teaching. Someone from an Ashkenazi teaching will tell you differently than what I'm about to say right now. And what I mean is that these don't mean anything. Okay? If Ashkenazi is a form of pronunciation and a trickling down effect of just location for certain Jewish peoples, and that certain pronunciations are changed depending on where your background is. So there is slightly a varied sound in each of these. If you want to know what it is, I'm sorry I can't tell you. I've not learned that. I know that it's there, but for our purposes, just know that you're going to see this. When you start reading and you start getting into reading full sentences in the Hebrew, you will run into the stopped sound right next to each of these. It's so subtle you almost don't even hear it, but for the most part, just know that don't let it throw you off. This is still an ah, this is still an ah, this is still an eh. Okay, we'll go ahead and leave it at that for our purposes here. The only other thing that I wanted to point out is how to read these in an actual word. Okay, let's see, what would be a good example? I'm going to do the word Shema, which means to hear. Okay, so first we have the Shin that has the dot on the right side. That's going to be the sh sound. I'm going to do my mem. Like we said, the difference between the mem in the middle of a word and the mem at the end of the word is the mem is going to be more curved. And it's going to have this little opening here if it's in the middle of a word. And then we have ayin, which is also a silent letter, just like the aleph. Okay, it's just going to carry the vowel sound. So if I write this, okay, so we have the shin, mem, and ayin. Stand alone, just like this. The shin, you can almost think of it as syllables. We'll say she. Okay, we have the eh sound underneath the sh, she. And then ma. Okay, that can say that on its own. Is just going to have the mem, ah. Is this sound here. Okay, shema. And because the ayin is silent, doesn't say a word. Okay, shema. If I'm going to move my paper up a little bit here to give a better example of some other words down here. Here's a very common word. I'm going to do my bet, resh, and cough. Chaf, really, excuse me. See how this has the dot in there, so it's going to say b instead of v. However, this does not have the dot in there, so it's going to say chaf instead of kaf. It's going to have the ch instead of a k. It has its softer sound because there is no dot in there. Okay, let me darken out my resh, just make it a little bit clearer. So if I say ba, and I don't actually know if this is the correct spelling of this, but for the sake of reading, that's okay. We'll just do this. Baruch. Okay, do you hear that? Ba. Cover that up. It's just going to take the b, a, that's this one up here, and then r is going to take the dots and have the sound. Ba, r, ch. and we'll have the final sound is going to stop it. See, if there were another vowel underneath here, it would keep going, but because there's not, this is going to be the stopping sound. Baruch. We'll do one more example before I end this video, just for the sake of getting something else in here for just some clarity. Let's do two more, okay? An example of the Vav sounds and an example of the modified sounds. So what I'm going to do for the Vav sounds is I'm going to do the Tet, Vav, and it's going to be the one at the top, so it says O, and then the Vet. Okay, we haven't really seen the Vet. We've talked about it, but we haven't seen it yet. This is the same as this letter. When it appears with the dot, it's a bet, and when it appears without the dot, it's a vet. Okay, so this one, there is no vowel underneath, so it says t, o, and then there's no vowel underneath here, so it's going to stop here, so it says tov. Tov means good. Okay, so if you say, Jennifer, how are you? Mashalameach. And I say, tov, I'm good. Okay? Yom tov, good day. Then, last example. Another very good word to know. We have our chet and our yud. Okay? And then we have our ah sound, our little T. So that would be cha on its own, but because we have the yud here that's going to modify it, it's going to be like this, and it's going to say I, and it will carry that sound from the chet. Okay, so it will say chai. Chai is life. Etz chayim is the tree of life. We'll get into what etz is and why chayim is what it is. That's for a different day. Just know that the ch with the ah sound modified by the yud will say chai. Alright, that's everything we're going to go over today. See you next time.